11 canned foods are being pulled from Walmart's supply commitments, the deadline's already in the contract calendar. You'd expect a shortage like this to hit store-brand knockoffs first. It doesn't. It's hitting names that have been on shelves since before your grandparents were born. At first, these look like 11 separate problems, a salmon shortage here, a tariff there. They're not. Line all 11 up, and one single pressure is hitting every can on that aisle at once, and almost nobody shopping there today has noticed. Number 3 surprises almost everyone. A brand on shelves since 1898, hit by that exact same pressure. Here's the good news. For most of these, a 5-minute trip this week fixes it completely. For one item on this list, even shopping today might already be too late. By the end, you'll know exactly which is which, and exactly what to grab before August 1st, while the price still reflects last year's numbers. 11 wild Alaskan salmon. You've probably walked past this can 100 times without a second glance. Same silver label, same modest price, sitting in the exact same spot it always has. That's precisely why it opens this list. Nobody expects a staple this stable to be the first domino. Alaska's Department of Fish and Game released its official 2026 harvest forecast in April, and the number is stark. Just 56 million pink salmon expected, the smallest run in more than 10 years. Pink salmon is the backbone of the entire canned salmon supply chain. When a harvest drops this hard, canneries don't quietly absorb it, they cut production, raise wholesale prices, and the first SKUs to disappear are the ones sitting on big box shelves at the lowest margins. The Bureau of Labor Statistics already clocked seafood prices up 3.7% in the first quarter of 2026 alone, and that's before this year's harvest numbers even finish working their way into contracts. Pop the lid on a can of this salmon, and you get that clean, cold water smell, the pink flesh flaking apart along the grain exactly the way it's supposed to. Picture that same shelf spot empty by September. Not a dramatic gap, just one fewer option, a slightly higher price tag on what's left. Grab 2 or 3 cans now, while the price still reflects last year's catch, because there's almost no domestic substitute at this price point once the shelf tightens. Number 10 takes something everyone assumes is a permanent bargain. 10 canned chicken. The item everyone treats as filler, the can you grab when nothing else in the pantry sounds good. That exact assumption is what's kept it underpriced for years. And it's precisely what the poultry industry is about to correct. The USDA's Livestock, Poultry, and Dairy Outlook, published in March 2026, flagged a real contraction in broiler production. Feed costs have stayed elevated since the start of the year, and processors are still rebuilding flocks after avian flu outbreaks tore through 15 states across 2024 and 2025. Conagra, which makes the Swanson canned chicken line, told investors on its February 2026 earnings call that this pressure isn't expected to ease before the second half of the year. Meanwhile, demand for anything shelf-stable has been running hotter than forecasted since late 2025, as more households quietly started building a pantry buffer. Crack a can open, and the smell is almost nothing at all, neutral, mild, cooked protein with nothing added. That blankness is exactly the value. It disappears into pasta, soup, casseroles, anything. That same versatility is why it vanishes fastest, once households start stocking up. Grab a case while it's still priced like an afterthought, because that price tag won't survive the next quarter. Number 9 hides in plain sight in a category most people assume is entirely homegrown. 9 canned Italian tomatoes. Most shoppers assume the crushed tomatoes and San Marzano cans on that shelf came from a farm somewhere in California. They didn't. Most of them came from Italy, and Italy's canned tomato exports just walked straight into a wall of new tariffs. In January 2026, the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative expanded Section 301 tariffs covering a wide range of European Union goods, and processed tomato products from Italy got caught directly in that expansion. The new rate took effect February 1st. Importers absorbed the first hit quietly through the spring, but the second wave, the actual renegotiated retail contract pricing, is landing right now. And here's the detail that matters most. Walmart has been in extended contract talks with several of its Italian tomato suppliers since the tariff hit, and multiple sources confirm August 1st is the exact date several of those protected pricing agreements expire. Crack open a real Italian tomato, and the smell is almost sweet, concentrated, faintly acidic, carrying whatever that volcanic soil and coastal sun gave the fruit. Domestic tomatoes will stay cheap. But if you specifically want the imported San Marzano or whole peeled varieties, that window closes on a specific date, not a vague one. Stock up before August 1st, because after that, the contract floor holding this price in place is gone. Number 8 is a category almost nobody's paying attention to, which is exactly the danger. 8. Canned sardines and mackerel. Watch anyone shop the canned aisle and you'll notice something. Almost nobody reaches for these. But the small number of people who do stock up on sardines know something the rest of the aisle doesn't yet, and that knowledge gap is about to close fast. The North Atlantic mackerel and sardine fisheries run on bilateral agreements between the U.S., Canada, the EU, and Norway. In February 2026, Norway unilaterally increased its own mackerel quota claim 18%, above what the 2025 multilateral framework had agreed to, citing its own updated stock assessments. The EU and UK formally protested the following month, but the practical effect for American importers is the same either way: real uncertainty in the primary sourcing region. On top of that, the American Action Forum published an analysis in March 2026 showing that tariffs on processed fish from Asian suppliers, the secondary source for sardines, had already pushed landed costs up somewhere between 22 and 31%, depending on country of origin. Pop a tin of smoked sardines and it hits you immediately: concentrated salt, smoke, ocean, nothing subtle about it. When both your primary and backup sourcing regions face pressure at the same time, buyers cut variety before they cut volume. Specialty tins and premium oils disappear first, then the basics get repriced. Walmart's seafood buyers reportedly have fewer suppliers to work with right now than at any point in the last 5 years. Move on the basics before that shrinking supplier list narrows your options even further. Number 7 is the one that catches almost everyone off guard. 7. Canned evaporated milk. It's been sitting on American shelves in essentially the same form since the 1880s. It costs next to nothing. It feels permanent. Here's the surprise. It's made from dairy, and America's dairy supply chain is under pressure from 3 directions simultaneously right now. The USDA's February 2026 Dairy Products Report showed whole milk powder inventories at their lowest point since 2019. Fluid milk output in the 3 biggest dairy states, California, Wisconsin, and Idaho, came in below seasonal expectations in the first quarter, a combination of herd health issues and the lingering aftereffects of the 2025 drought that hit forage crops across the Mountain West. On top of the dairy squeeze, the Can Manufacturers Institute confirmed in January 2026 that steel and aluminum can costs are staying elevated thanks to the reinstated Section 232 tariffs, 25% on steel, 10% on aluminum, both effective January 1st. Because evaporated milk is such a low-price product relative to its can size, packaging cost eats up a much bigger share of the total price than it does for something like soup or canned meat. Tilt and open can over a pot and it pours thick, pale yellow, nothing like the milk it started as. It stores for up to 2 years at room temperature, which makes this one of the easiest items on the whole list to hedge against. Grab 4 to 6 cans now, while the price still reflects last year's input costs, because that price won't hold past the fourth quarter. Number 6 looks like permanent abundance. It isn't. 6. Canned chili with beans. Walk into any Walmart and you'll find an entire section devoted to it. Hormel, Wolf brand, a half dozen store brands. It feels like a category where scarcity simply can't happen. It's happening anyway, on 2 fronts at once. Hormel Foods told investors on its first quarter fiscal 2026 earnings call, released in February, that its shelf-stable segment was seeing real margin compression from rising input costs. Around the same time, the USDA reported that the national hog inventory had dropped 2.1% year-over-year, continuing a decline that's been building since 2023 as producers responded to a rough stretch of losses. Pork is the backbone protein in most canned chili, and that supply trend isn't reversing quickly. The bean side of the recipe isn't faring any better. The USDA's March 2026 prospective plantings report showed dry bean acreage across the northern plains, the main domestic growing region, set to fall 6% this year as farmers shift toward more profitable commodity crops. Crack open a can and the smell hits immediately: warm spiced tomato, slow-cooked pork, one of the most complete single-can meals in the entire store. A 6% acreage drop doesn't cause a shortage overnight, but it creates exactly the kind of tightness that triggers contract renegotiations at the retail level. Grab a few cans across different brands now, before that contract math catches up to the price tag. Number 5 sits so far outside most people's weekly shopping list that almost nobody notices it's about to change. 5. Canned corned beef. For most shoppers, this doesn't even register. It sits quietly at the end of the canned meat aisle, picked up only by people who already know exactly what they're going to do with it. That invisibility has kept it cheap and consistently stocked for years. That's ending now, for reasons that are already fully documented. Most of the canned corned beef sold in the U.S. comes from Brazil, produced by major processors including JBS and Minerva Foods. In March 2026, the USDA's Food Safety and Inspection Service expanded its residue testing requirements on Brazilian beef imports, following a February audit that found compliance gaps at 3 separate processing facilities. That doesn't mean the product is unsafe. It means longer processing at the border, slower shipments, and higher costs per unit for importers already working on thin margins. Layer on top of that the updated Section 301 tariff schedule from January 2026, which placed processed Brazilian beef in a category facing additional duties compared to what was in effect before 2025. 2 separate cost pressures, hitting from both ends of the supply chain at the same time. Open the can and it's salty, slightly gamey, a richness plant protein simply can't replicate. It stores for 2 to 5 years, so there's no reason to wait. Stock it now, before the border testing friction finishes working its way into the retail price, because both of those pressures are about to meet at the same point. Number 4 is already sitting in most people's pantry, which is exactly why nobody's watching it. 4. Canned tuna. You already know it matters. It's probably in your pantry right now, and the real question isn't whether you have some, it's whether you have enough. Most people assume tuna is too big a category to be vulnerable. It isn't. Star-kissed, bumblebee, and chicken of the sea all source heavily from Thailand, and Walmart's own store brand tuna almost certainly comes through the same regional co-packers. A March 2026 catch data report showed reduced catch volumes on the sourcing side at the exact same time tariff rates on the primary processing country increased. Two pressures moving in the same direction at the same time. That's a cost compounding event, not a temporary blip. Open a can of water-packed tuna, and you get that clean, mild ocean smell, the kind that reminds you it came from somewhere real not that long ago. That smell is about to carry a higher price tag by the third quarter of 2026, based on contracts already being renegotiated right now. Add 6 to 12 cans to your next order before August. Number 3 is the one I mentioned at the start, the brand almost nobody expects to be affected. 3-can soup Campbell's. Specifically, Campbell's, one of the most recognizable names in American grocery, sitting on shelves in essentially the same form since 1898. It feels like a fixed point, a category where disruption just doesn't happen. That feeling is about to be wrong. On its second quarter fiscal 2026 earnings call in March, Campbell Soup Company told investors it was managing sustained cost pressure across 3 areas at once: protein costs, vegetable commodity costs, and steel packaging costs. That third one is the interesting part. The Section 232 steel tariffs, reinstated at 25% effective January 1st, 2026, hit the can manufacturing costs Campbell's absorbs on every single unit it ships. And it gets worse. The Can Manufacturers Institute noted in February 2026 that domestic steel prices rose too, as U.S. producers adjusted their own pricing upward in response to the new tariff floor. So it's not just imported steel getting more expensive. Domestic steel is rising right along with it. Campbell's doesn't absorb costs like that forever. It passes them through at the next contract renewal. A can of chicken noodle soup on a cold morning, steam rising, the salt hitting you before the spoon even reaches your mouth. This is the pattern I mentioned earlier. A legacy American brand that's been stable for over a century, hit by the exact same tariff structure squeezing everything else on this list. Grab a few cans of your favorite variety before the next renewal cycle. Number 2 looks completely immune to all of this. It isn't. 2-can refried beans. Cheap, domestic, made from a crop grown right across the American Southwest and northern Mexico. On paper, this looks like the single most shortage-proof item on the entire list. It would take a genuinely unusual alignment of forces to move the price on something this basic. That alignment just happened. The USDA's November 2025 crop production summary showed the dry bean harvest across the main growing states, North Dakota, Michigan, Nebraska, and Minnesota, came in 14% below the 5-year average. Drought across the northern plains through the summer of 2025, tracked weekly by the U.S. Drought Monitor, hit yields on a planting year that was already smaller than usual. And the USDA's March 2026 prospective plantings report confirmed farmers aren't recovering that acreage this year either. They're still favoring more profitable commodity crops. On the Mexican side, a 25% tariff on Mexican agricultural imports, effective February 2026 under the expanded Section 301 schedule, hit the pinto beans that major processors like Rosarita and Old El Paso blend into their recipes alongside domestic supply. Both supply lines, domestic and imported, under pressure at the same time. Refried beans straight from the can have that warm, earthy smell, smoky in the traditional lard version, clean and neutral in the vegetarian one. They store for at least 3 years and deliver one of the highest calorie per dollar ratios in the entire canned aisle. This isn't a category with visible warning signs before the price moves. By the time you notice, it's already moved. Grab a case now while the current contract terms still hold. Number 1 sits at the very top of this list for a reason. Most shoppers have no idea it's even in play. 1. Dole pineapple. It looks like something you grab without thinking, bright yellow label, cheerful tropical fruit on the front, sitting in the same Walmart aisle it has occupied for decades. Dole Food Company's canned pineapple feels permanent. It feels like it will always be there. In some ways, that reputation is earned. But what is happening to its price and availability right now is entirely current, and almost nobody pushing a cart through Walmart today is tracking it. Thailand supplies the dominant share of the world's processed pineapple. Between 2023 and 2024, its harvest collapsed by 65%, falling from over 2 million tons to between 600,000 and 700,000 tons. The cause was one of the strongest El Niño events on record, pushing growing region temperatures above 43 degrees Celsius. Daily fruit deliveries to Thai canneries fell to between 150 and 400 tons against a normal intake of several thousand. Dole Food Company, whose Southeast Asian supply chain sits directly inside that collapsed origin, has been absorbing that pressure since 2024. Canned pineapple remains scarce worldwide in mid-2026, still trading well above pre-2024 price levels, with no full recovery projected before 2027. NPR confirmed the American retail consequence in January 2026 after a shelf-by-shelf price audit across 114 items at Walmart. Dole canned pineapple had become 25% more expensive in a single year. Dole Food Company itself cited weather-related crop shortages and tariffs on Southeast Asian imports. The United States confirmed a 36% reciprocal tariff on all Thai goods as part of its 2025 trade restructuring. When Dole's primary processing origin is simultaneously running at a fraction of normal capacity and hit with a 36% import tax on whatever product does ship, the math becomes structurally unsustainable. August 15th is the window, when Dole Food Company's own supply chain cannot keep up and the government has made importing their product 36% more expensive, availability stops being guaranteed. Walmart has already passed one round of that cost to shoppers. After August 15th, there may not be a second round to wait for because the shelf may simply be empty.